It's recording as of now. I want this to be interactive. There's a chat here in Zoom. If you're new to Zoom webinars, and you've not been on one of these with us before, just hit the chat button, fire any questions in. Now, what I might not do is I might not answer them at the precise moment you fire the question in. That doesn't mean I'm ignoring it. It means I'm looking for the right opportunity to mention it. So we will cover all questions to the best of our ability. I will try and be respectful, though, and keep this to an hour because I appreciate we're all busy. We all have things to do in a day. Oh, by the way, I'm going to leave my camera on because I kind of like having it on. And hopefully you can see we're here and we're engaging. If you see me looking to the side, that way in particular, that's where my slides are. So it's kind of a bit weird if I'm looking off to one side ever so slightly. But that's what we're going to do anyway. So here we go. I'm going to start with something relatively shameless just because it's important. For those, if you don't know already, you haven't seen an email, InvisiblePPC, and I'll tell you more about us in a second. We're running a promotion right now for new clients. So if you have a new Google Ads client, and by new, I mean they're new to advertising in Google AdWords, Google Ads, I still can't get used to the new terminology, then we're doing a promo right now where it's in 3 parts. Part number 1 is we give $150 or the nearest local equivalent in free ad spend in month 1 for the client. In month 2 and month 3, we discount our management fee for the client by $150 each month or local equivalent. Most people have seen that already. It's sent us crazy busy with new clients coming in, which is wonderful for us and for those clients who are getting a great deal, and those partners who are getting some extra margin in their services. Go to our website, InvisiblePPC.com/free 450. That's the word free, F-R-E-E, for the number 450, and it's got all the details. I'm not going to go through everything here and now, but it's there and it's an offer. So who am I? So for those of you who don't know me, and I recognize many of the names on the course, I know lots of people already do. My name's Rob. I'm the founder here at InvisiblePPC. And I'll tell you more about InvisiblePPC on the next slide. But basically, I live and breathe agencies and PPC all day long. That's what I do. When I'm not doing that, you'll usually find me in a CrossFit gym, causing myself pain. And correct, Darren says, yes, I'm pretty short. Yeah, relatively to those guys, they're monsters, those guys. And yeah, that's actual real size. That's me. I'm about 3 foot. So yeah, so that's me. I actually had in my nerdy world, the privilege of going to see the CrossFit Games in Madison, Wisconsin in early August, where the best athletes in the world compete. And the rest of us over 40s and less fit sit and watch in awe and admiration of what they've achieved. So that's me. InvisiblePPC. It's been going around over 6 years now, properly. We're a team of about 25, and pretty much all we do, not quite all we do, but mostly what we do is Google Ads. We do some Facebook, or a little bit Facebook, and we do some Bing, but predominantly we're about paid search and supporting paid search. And we do that with about $2 million a month in ad spend. We work with lots of agencies. And my favorite thing of all is that Google have a thing called the channel sales team, which is about 1% of worldwide partners. It's a few hundred, and we're the only 100% white label agency in that group. And that makes me smile because that's taken us 5 years to get into that club, and we're the only one of our kind that's made it. And we do things on their executive council as well. So we're going to be here talking about the Magic 100. Who knows what I'm talking about with the Magic 100? Any guesses? Fire it in the chat if you know what I'm talking about. Darren says that Chet Holmes. No, it's got nothing to do with Chet Holmes, although Chet Holmes has got some pretty cool stuff. David says days. Nathan says that clients. Austin's got it. Yeah, the first 100 days of a relationship with a client. And we're here to talk about growing. So it's kind of surprising that we're talking about the first 100 days of a client relationship. And you'll see why this matters so much. I have a friend of mine, and some of you may know this guy, so I'm not going to name him on this call today, who, in his world, the way to grow your business is by sell, sell, sell. And fair play, he is a brilliant salesperson. I mean world-class salesperson. He can close clients effortlessly in his sleep at scale. I know few people as good at him at actually the sharp end of not the marketing, not the prospecting, actually closing a sale. He'd already built a successful agency with 100 clients in it. I mean, that's good going from zero. Went on a sales campaign and won another 130. And I'm rounding slightly. It might be 129, but the conversation we had, 130 is roughly the number. He sold the heck out of it and did a fantastic job. Won all kinds of sales prizes for being so clever and selling so much. They broke their fulfillment, they broke their service delivery, they broke their business, and they lost 150 clients in less than a year. It's actually about 9 months. So what looks on the face of it like fantastic growth and fantastic winning actually left them in a worse position than before they started. And you can imagine the emotional stress and strain that comes with that. If you're in that position and you're winning, to then find you're losing, that hurts like hell. If anybody here has ever lost a client, and I'm assuming that most people have lost a client at some point in their life, we all know it hurts. Nobody enjoys that feeling. Even if you're not, you're not enjoying the relationship necessarily, still losing a client sucks. To lose 150 new clients in 9 months is difficult. Excuse me. The plus side, though, they learned from that massively. They're smart guys. They get it. They understand that when you screw up, it's not about what happened. It's about what you learn from it, what you take from it, and what you do different next time. And so they're now rebuilding what will be a much bigger, stronger business on the back of that experience. And I know people often say that pain is a great teacher. We learn from our mistakes. That's a lot of pain to go through, but I'm sure the lessons are massive and valuable. And I'm going to see them in a few weeks, so I'll let you know what the update is on that one because it's fantastic. So it goes to show no matter how good a sales machine you are, no matter how good your marketing, your prospect and acquisition is, if you can't retain, you can't grow. So I want to get this in context. I said at the start of this, in the preparation for this session, it's about 3 times growth. But it actually can be so much more than that. And I want to look at the numbers. I promise this is the only slide where we're going into numbers. And I guess it's the accountant coming out in maybe at this point. But let's take a look at a really simple client paying you $1,000 a month retainer. I'm going to assume for the purposes of this slide that 6 months is average retention. Now, you may laugh at 6 months and say that's way worse than I do. I'm better than that. You may dream of 6 month client retention and it's far beyond what you are. But 6 months, a reasonable starting point for the purpose of this illustration. If you get a $1,000 a month client, whether it's dollars, pounds, whatever it might be, and you keep them 6 months, you get $6,000 out of them. But if you keep them a year, your revenue has doubled, obviously. 2 years, it's 4x. Now look what happens if you go backwards. If you go back down to even a 1 month retention, and I see 1 month retention happen frequently. So far more than you would ever think it's possible to happen. We see with accounts that come to us on occasions, retention issues in 2 weeks. Should never, ever happen, but it does. We see retention issues in 2 weeks. So think about what happens when you're doing this. Think of all the effort you put into making a sale. Think of all the prospects you've had to talk to, all the lead generation work you've had to do, all those sales calls, all those negotiations to win a client. If you go through all that pain and lose it in a month, was it worth it? It almost certainly wasn't. If you lose it in 3 months, was it worth it? Again, probably not. All that effort in the sales process is unpaid. You don't make your money generally at the start of a relationship, because at the start of a relationship, we'll talk more about this in a bit, you're investing in it, you're building it, you're growing it, you're putting time and effort in. I've often likened it to a dating relationship, and it is. Everybody knows at the start of a relationship, you're all in, trying to be the best version of you can possibly be. It's hard work, it's relentless. You know, just trying to make sure that everything is rosy and, you know, the real you doesn't show out and they realize you're a crazy axe murderer. You know, you're trying to present a coherent, you know, just try and be a functioning human being for a bit and not let them see the real you. So you don't make as much money at the start of a relationship. But think about the way any relationship matures. As it matures over time, it gets easier. You get relaxed. You don't have to go out for dinner 5 times a week. You don't have to, you know, do flowers or dates twice, 3 times a week. The effort level reduces because you've built trust. You've built relationship. And so you make a lot more money. Now, I'm going to give you some numbers that aren't on the screen, but they're really important. At InvisiblePPC, with the accounts that we see, by far the biggest drop-off point is in months 1 through 3. 90 days after an account is turned live is when we see the biggest risk of cancellation. What we see is that 60% of people will make it to 90 days, 60% of new accounts. But, so that's 40% that don't. That's 4 out of 10 sales do not make it to 90 days. But then the magic happens. Because once somebody hits 90 days, then 4 out of 5 of them will make 6 months. And of the people that hit 6 months, 9 out of 10 will make a year. And the people who hit a year, 95%, so 19 out of 20 will hit 2 years. So think about that in terms of effort. You know, we've got a 60% chance to get into a month 3, 80% chance from there to month 6. But after that, the chances of getting somebody to be a 2-year or longer client go through the roof. It's dramatic. So the effort in that first 100 days pays you back tenfold. It's just a huge, huge game changer. Everybody got me with that? Does everybody make sense to everybody? Let me know in the chat. Yep, see some yes coming in. And that's the reality of it. It isn't, and people think it's, I know, a small difference. It isn't a small difference. It isn't a 10% or a 20% or a 50% difference. On the sheet here, as you can see, it's a 4 times difference on the 6 months money. It's a 12 times difference on the 3 months money. It's huge. Now, what's even better than that, I've just kept this simple for just ease, but think about any relationship that you have with a client. A client that stays with you doesn't just stay static very often. They will tend to grow with you. So not only will they be spending what they've started to spend, but they'll spend more. They'll buy more services. They'll increase budgets, all of which make these numbers way better, way better. So it's really important that you understand that the relationship will grow. They tend not to stay static. And I can see some great questions coming in the chat box from Fran and from Brian, and I'm going to come back to those in a few seconds. I want to just touch on Fran's briefly because we're going to look at it. Fran says, one in particular is turning these clients off. There must be several reasons. I'm going to show you those reasons next. And more importantly, what to do about it. We go any further though. Ask yourself, if you want to type it in the chat box, go ahead. If you prefer to keep it to yourself, go ahead. How long do your customers typically stay now? If you think about your agency, your business, how long do people stay currently? I apologize if you can see me swigging water as we go through this. I'll do it fairly regularly. Dean says 6 months plus. Any more coming in? 6 to 12. Nathan says pretty transactional. Yeah. 6 months, a few years. Yeah, you can. We have client relationships that last, currently we have relationships that lasted 5 years, some of our clients. But it is the key thing here. So let's talk about this. David says 5 to 7 years. David, I would love to see how you do that. That's wonderful. You could, the magic 100 days. First 100 days from when a client says yes to the end of the 3rd month of service. If you nail that period in your business, the effects are dramatic on everything that you do. So let's make some magic happen and get into how we actually do this. First things, retention and therefore growth happens by design. We don't retain clients by accident. Everything that we do, if we do it deliberately and with intention, determines our outcome. I'm going to give you some specifics. He says confidently, go on. In my opinion, you get to choose your retention rate. You as an agency owner decide how long you're going to keep your clients. And you do that by, first of all, in the very first instance, choosing who you work with. We're going to look at that in more detail in a moment, but you get to choose who are your clients. You get to choose whether you work with good quality clients who are likely to stay, whether you work with low quality clients who are likely to churn. You don't have an obligation to work with any client that you choose not to. So if you take on a client knowing that you don't think they're going to stick around, then you're setting yourself up for that to start with. It's always likely to happen. The next most important thing, after the who you're working with, the promise that you make them is the next most important thing. And again, it's completely in your control. You decide what you're selling them. You decide how you sell it. You decide the promise, the guarantee, the service that you sell. I'm going to get you 1 million leads in the next month for a $1,000 budget. If you make that promise and you don't deliver that promise, that's going to be a struggle. Make wise promises that you can keep. And by promise, I mean just the service you're doing. Make sure what you sell makes sense. Make sure you can fulfill it and make sure you do fulfill it. And then finally, develop a relationship with them. We're humans. We like relationships with people. We like to feel valued, appreciated. We like to have a relationship with the people who provide our service. That doesn't mean taking them out for dinner. That might just mean a phone call, an email, a text message. It can mean lots of different things. But people like relationships. Transactions don't build a relationship. A long-term partnership does that. Oops. Sorry. And there's a caveat to this. There's always that one that's 50 Shades of Crazy. The exception doesn't make the rule. We all have weird things happen. I've had clients who've died. Pretty hard to retain a client who's died. We've had clients who've sold up. I had one client who made a fortune on Bitcoin and shut down the business and retired. I couldn't have foreseen that, planned for that, or anticipated it or done anything about it, but it still happened. I would like to think they're the exceptions, not the norm. Don't, and it's an easy thing to do, don't lull yourself into a false sense of security by going, this weird thing happened, therefore it wasn't my fault. I couldn't affect that. The minute you say this is down to something weird, outside of my control, you hand over the power to resolve it. Because you're giving up. You say, it's not on me, it's nothing to do with me, it's something that somebody else did or didn't do, it's their fault, not mine. Great example. A client that doesn't follow up leads properly. If the client doesn't follow up leads properly and cancels because they're not converting, could you have done something about that? Could you have taken ownership of that? Could you have got involved in that? It's a really easy thing to do to say it was the client. It's a much more difficult but a far more profitable thing to do to get involved in becoming part of the solution, not the problem. Don't ever give away responsibility, guys. You give away power when you do that. So we'll talk about who in terms of the client first of all. Let's look at who at a macro level first. Because the first thing that often we come across is the market that this client is in the right market? Can they support a fee? Can the client get an ROI? You know, you see my silly example on screen right now. You know, if someone's selling paper clips versus dental implants with $1,000 budget and $1,000 in fees, who's going to win? I'd hate to try and sell paper clips with that kind of budget. It's not going to work. And you can see that up front. You can make a choice up front to either go into that market or not go into that market and be a valuable advisor, even if being valuable actually means saying, sorry, that's a really dumb idea, don't do it. But you get to choose that at a macro level. Silly example. You can see some of these markets as well where it doesn't matter who the client would be in the market. For example, if you have a truck and you're in a motor race, Formula One race or a MotoGP or IndyCar, the truck isn't going to win. It doesn't matter who's driving the truck or whether it's the best truck around, it's still going to lose. If you're going into a market where you're going to lose regardless of how good your client is, don't do it. Don't sell that thing. You're setting yourself up to have a retention failure before you start. And at a micro level, it's their individual client. Is this going to be a good client? Because I said a few minutes ago, the first thing to do is pick a good client to work with. Let's have a look what that looks like. And you probably know most of these things already, and you've probably got ideas as well. David's put in the chat, cheap clients are usually the fastest to go. I would completely agree. Cheap clients, on the whole, suck because they need miracles, and they usually need the miracles now. And even when you deliver a miracle, they're not happy. I read a Facebook post this morning about somebody who has delivered a 7x ROI on an ad campaign for their client. It wasn't one of ours. And in the circumstances of this client, that was awesome. It's transformed the client's business. And they're now trying to haggle price and haggle work down because they can't see the value. I mean, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. They should be lifelong friends, you would think, but clients don't always appreciate it. So what makes a good client? And there's a whole bunch of things. In the world of PPC, any client that has other advertising is usually a really strong sign because they understand what happens when you spend money to acquire customers. A client that understands that customers don't always come for free, there is a cost associated with getting them, and they're familiar with putting money out without the guarantee of a return is massively, massively helpful. My single biggest red flag in any client activity, are they referral dependent? If you've got a client who is referral dependent, that's going to be really, really hard because as a business, they're usually not set up to take on new clients from cold. And that ties in really nicely with the next point. Do they have skilled people who are capable of answering the phone and selling? Quick chat in the message, put in now. How many here, who's here has got clients who've, you've either listened to call recordings or you've been involved in the process and you've seen firsthand a client receptionist, telephone answer person, or whoever it is who answers the phones or deals with leads, could be an assistant, destroying a campaign. Has that happened? Who's that happened to here? David, yeah. Michael, yeah. Robert, yeah. It's the worst thing in the world. It drives me nuts. It absolutely drives me nuts. Because you've probably got a relatively low-paid junior member of staff killing your campaign. And guess what? The business owner blames you, not them. It's your fault, not the business owners. It's not their staff. And it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. Be the person who can solve that problem for them, and they'll love you forever if they're willing to admit it. You want clients who've got follow-up processes in place. Not everybody buys on the first phone call. Most won't. Make sure that you've got clients who've got good follow-up in place. A client that knows the numbers. My favorite ever phrase that you've heard me say before, if you've been on webinars before, is a client who just wants to, what do these clients want? What's the typical thing that a client wants to get? The phrase that we hear the most often, I just want more phone calls. And you cry a little bit every time you hear that. Because if they don't know the numbers, if they don't know what good looks like, you're in a world where you don't know if you've delivered that good for them or not. And if you don't know if you've delivered good, it's a difficult place to be. It then becomes a matter of opinion. And the only person whose opinion matters is the one who's paying the bills. And their opinion might not be sensible. One thing, again, that will kill any activity you do, and I suggest is an important piece of due diligence. Check a client's online reputation before you agree to take them on. Oh dear, somebody just fell on the floor. If their reputation's terrible, that's a difficult thing to deal with. People are less likely to hire you. It's an issue we have actually got right this second. Full disclosure, full confession. At InvisiblePPC, somebody approached us for a job. We took them through an interview process and ultimately didn't hire them. They've gone around the internet leaving negative reviews with them and 2 friends. And we're working on getting them removed. We know exactly who it is and when they did them. And it's terrible. But at the moment, if you see our Google review, as of yesterday, it was 1.3 stars from 3 reviews all left on the same day. And that hurts. I know of at least 2 clients who chose not to work with us because they saw we got a 1.3 star Google review. It will kill your campaign and therefore cause you a problem as a marketing agency. Make sure the client's got realistic budgets. Make sure they've got realistic expectations. They need to know the numbers and they need to be realistic about what they think you can do for them. And got a reasonable time frame and level of commitment. Level of commitment is really important. Again, one of my pet phrases that you'll see, everybody who's on this call has probably heard this many times. The client who goes, I'm going to try it on a small budget for 30 days and see how it goes from there. If it works, I might scale it. Who's had that conversation before? Yeah, and Nathan said he's seen my reviews and they're not convincing, but yeah, we've got them. It's hard. Yeah, constantly get the conversation. Yeah, Dave says I want to take a customer for 30 days. Good. Don't take a customer for 30 days. If that's their level of commitment to the process, you're setting yourself up for failure and setting yourself up for a bad customer experience, and it will be horrible. And one thing that we often undervalue, somebody who's pleasant and respectful to deal with. We've all had that client for whom, when you see their phone number on your caller ID on your cell, and your kind of stomach tightens because you know this guy's going to be a jerk. Like a big lady, it's frequently a guy, although we get both. Don't deal with rude, disrespectful people. You don't need that in your life. Because if that's how they're treating you as a supplier, think about how they're treating their customers. Think how hard it's going to be to get good outcomes for them if they treat people badly. Michael, thank you for your comments. And I know you guys run a legit business because you came highly recommended by a 7-figure agency friend. That's really nice to hear that. And a bad client is pretty much everything above, that's the opposite. And there's one that I would add to that for a bad client prospect. And you can usually sniff this out. Look out for anybody who sounds desperate. If somebody is desperate, don't get involved. And that sounds really harsh because sometimes people need something to try and turn their business around. But the chances of you getting the outcome that they need and the time frame that they need it and the budget they have are really, really low. And if they're desperate, they will be all over you like a rash, micromanaging every moment of the experience. Yeah, Raoul says, I've had that and it's not good. Yeah, it's horrid. I once did it by accident and it was a horrible experience. And that's really harsh because you want to help people out when they're desperate. And I get that completely. If you want to do people a favor on the side and help them, by all means, be a good Samaritan, be a nice human and help. But think of it outside a business transaction because it will hurt you. And I want to remind everybody of this. We often forget choosing a bad client costs you time and money. If you're investing into a knowingly high risk client, you can't spend that time twice. You could be spending it on a really high value client. And why wouldn't you? Think back to those numbers before. If it's a 3-month client, it's a 3,000 client versus a 24,000 client. Where is your time better invested? High churn risk clients, they suck up your time, your mental energy, and you've just got to deal with it. And you're going to be dealing with negativity. You're going to be dealing with difficulty. That gets really hard work. It's really tiring, exhausting doing that. And if a client isn't happy, then think about your reputation, or even if it's somebody you don't hire, think about your reputation. And it can also have knock-on consequences, and it can just damage your own faith in your own abilities. And that's really hard because it might stop you doing the outbound things and the activities that would generate you the good clients because of that bad experience. Who's ever had a bad client experience? Put it in the chat. Have you had a bad client experience that's actually had an emotional effect where afterwards you kind of just felt drained and down about the world just because of that one client? Yeah, John says absolutely. Dean says yeah. David says learning experience. Austin says still trying to get over it. Yeah, it hurts. And it can, I've seen people stop prospecting for a month because they had one client and it was a horrible experience. And think of the damage that does to your client, to your business in the long term, if you have to go through kind of cold turkey and emotional recovery every time you deal with a bad client. It's not worth it. So let's get into these magic keys. Let's get into the important things. I'm just going to check back in the chat for a second. I can see something else. I can see the Q&A box as well. Okay, right. Yeah, Douglas says, don't ever lose sight of the 80-20. First thing, when we want to grow by retaining well, that doesn't start when they're a client. That starts during sales. Retention starts in the sales process. I said it before in terms of the promises you make. It absolutely starts. So think about your sales conversation. You're having a sales conversation with somebody, you're good to go. They're a yes. They're going to be a prospect to you. You've been through their business. You've got confirmed they've got a need for what you can do. You've positioned yourself well. You've shown results. They're on board with you. They're sold. It's time to wrap that conversation up, get it over the line, turn them into a client. What I'm going to show you is 6 or 7 points that if you get this right when you close that sale, you've put the first big peg in the ground, you've turned the first key to keeping that client for the long term. Make sure when you wrap up, you cover the promise. Make sure you're very clear that they understand what you are saying to them. I will run your ads campaign for the next 90 days. We will optimize it. We will do X. We will do Y. We will do Z. Whatever it is you're promising to them, and be very specific, either in the things you are going to do or the results you expect to get, but make sure they understand what is being delivered. If you've not promised a particular number of leads, the client should be absolutely clear that you've not made that promise. They shouldn't be able to infer it. They shouldn't be able to second guess it. They shouldn't be able to imagine it, but often they do. So make sure you know and they know what you've promised them, what you've sold them, essentially what's in the box. Make sure they are equally clear as to what they are expected to invest for that box of goodies and when they will be paying you. Make sure that's agreed up front. Really, really, really important. We're going to talk about this in a few minutes. Make sure during the closing part of your sales process, they know how they're going to be onboarded into your business and they know the immediate next thing that is going to happen. So they've got this is our overall process. First, we're going to have a discovery meeting to run through all the details and reconfirm. Then we're going to go away and do some build. Then we're going to run some tests with you. Then we're going to do this. Then we're going to do that. Make sure you've got it mapped out. Make sure they understand what that looks like. And make sure they understand the thing that will happen next in the process. Equally importantly, if there are things that that client has to do, make sure they know that. I see it numerous times where people will, for example, order a landing page for their PPC campaign, only to discover 10 days later, the client's no idea who the domain's hosted with. They don't know who to get in so they can set up the CNAME record, set up landing page. The whole thing stalls. And then we get into a situation where they're calling their web guy, but they don't speak to the person who did this anymore, and the person who set up the domain is a different person. And you can go through, you can lose weeks and weeks and weeks dealing with the fact that nobody knows who owns the domain or how to log into it. Make sure they're clear up front as to what is expected of them and that they can do it. It's no good knowing what to do if they can't actually do it for you. And also make sure that you've set out a communication schedule for the first 4 weeks at least. Clients have a habit of making their own schedules up. If you don't tell them what the schedule is, they will imagine something in their head. Okay? They'll imagine something, and it might not match your expectations. And if it doesn't match, you've started with a problem because you've got both different expectations of what that relationship's going to look like. Make sure they understand an approximate timeline, which comes back to process, and make sure they agree to it all at the end. And make sure you do this confidently. This can, apart from the fact this can lose you the sale if you don't do this confidently, if you do it confidently, it has exactly the opposite effect. It positions and reinforces your role as the expert in the process. So make sure you do it confidently and clearly. Everybody got that? You just give me a yes if you've got that in the chat. Yep, see a lot of yes coming in, cool. Sounds basic, but in reality, we see this a lot. Agencies don't have a sales closing process. I wouldn't want anybody on a sales call or a sales closing meeting or whatever it is without a checklist to actually have that in place. To make sure you absolutely have it done. Don't forget anything. If you forget something in that conversation and you go back to ask for it afterwards, you look unprofessional. Make sure you've asked at the right time. Yeah, David says that he only works with referrals, so it's relatively easy because there's already a level of trust there. And that's fine. Have that level of trust. Still have a good process for that sales conversation closing. Because apart from anything else, if one person's out sick and somebody else has to do it, you want to make sure it's done to the same standard, it's done right, and the expectations are managed correctly. So whoever's doing it, make sure it's done properly. Magic key number 2. I love this. Onboarding theatre. Who thinks about their business as being theatrical in any way or a performance? It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Excuse me. Your onboarding process should be a theatrical production in the way it works. It should leave people with an emotional state that is the state you want them to have. John says never thought about it like that, but it's true. Jason says awesome way to think of it. It is. You create that experience, and it's all about, it's 10 days potentially. It might be 3 days, it might be 10 days, it might be 14 days in your business, but it accounts for a massive part of your retention and your growth that comes from it. Because you've got to handle it with skill, with compassion, and show expertise. And it sets the tone. If you're uncertain, if you don't communicate, if you're unclear, if there are problems during the onboard, it's undermining your position. You're putting doubt in a client's mind. And what's the thing that's happened immediately prior to onboarding? They've probably given you some money. And at this point, you've delivered precisely zero value back. So, I mean, it's a startup phase. You've paid cash, got nothing. The way you manage them through that process while they're getting nothing determines pretty much most of what happens next. If they don't trust you at this point, they probably never will. And let's get into that psychology piece. And just to answer, Chris, you said, how often do you do these webinars? We generally do at least one every month, Chris, sometimes more often. And if you use the chat box, it's different from the Q&A. I've got both open, but most comments come in the chat. So help yourself over there, Chris. People love to say yes. Much as people don't like to be sold to, they do like to buy. And saying yes and buying something feels awesome. We all know how much we like to click that button on Amazon when we bought something on Amazon Prime and we know it's going to magically appear in the mail the next day. It releases a big shot of dopamine, the happiness chemical in the brain, when you say yes, when you buy something, when you commit to something. But it's a really fleeting feeling. Really fleeting. And the moment that dopamine level drops even slightly, your client goes into buyer's remorse. And it's not particularly because of anything you've done. That's because we're human beings and that's the way we behave. You really need to manage that. And be aware it's happened. Be aware it's happening to you, whether you think about it or not. No matter how pleased that client was when you closed them and how excited they were when you shook hands and walked out of their office or they came off the call. Within 10 minutes of you leaving that office or putting that phone down, that's going. They're in nervous mode now. Have I done the right thing? Can I really trust these guys? What if they don't deliver? I've been burned before. Manage that process and manage it carefully. And it comes back to, again, reminding them that you're the expert. Have a process in place. We talked about it in the last slide. What the process is going to be, what's going to happen next, what they've got to do, etc. Make sure that that's done. Make sure they understand the big picture as well. Make sure they understand the whole timeline. Plan the regular communication. We've already talked about that. And the really important thing is, whenever you complete a step in the process with a client, tell them what's coming next. Let them know what's coming. And just as importantly, why it matters to them and why it's in their best interests. You absolutely have to say, hey, we've just got the tracking in place. Now we're going to set up the call tracking numbers now so we get call recordings. Here's why this is really good for you, because you'll be able to review the calls. You'll know exactly what delivered. You'll be able to look at your processes and improve them. Tell them why it matters to them and why it's in their interests. And keep it about them. People love talking about their own business. They don't like talking about yours quite so much. So make sure you're focused on them and their business during this process. And surprise them. Anybody who joined the webinar we did with Carl Sakis a few weeks ago, Carl's a big fan of sending gifts of surprises, from the simple handwritten note to an email to a text to a referral to something. Use the opportunity. Remember what I said a few minutes ago about an onboarding process. They've given you money and got zero value, apart from the experience that you create for them. Little surprises, little moments of delight, all give a little hint of that dopamine shot again, and they all make a big, big difference. And we've made this easy for you. If anybody's been on our website, Go to InvisiblePPC.com/PPC agency resources. Don't worry about writing that down. I'm not going to put it in the chat. Go to InvisiblePPC.com. It's in the resources page. We've got an easy checklist for onboarding, so you can, and it's white label, so you can use it yourself. Use that to set out the process. Use that to set it all out, and then you don't have to worry too much about the process. You just need to worry about making it feel great. Make it feel great. Delight people, surprise them. Okay, one final point on this onboarding piece. Speed really matters. Anything you can do to make it go faster increases your chances of retaining that client. Think about it again. That period, how difficult is it to manage buyer's remorse for one day while you set things up? It's not difficult. We're all used to waiting overnight for Amazon Prime parcels to come. Think about those parcels that take a week to come. And 5 days comes and we're starting to wonder whether it's going to come on time. 8 days, it should have been here by now, getting nervous. We see that in the things that we do on the trivial things that we've ordered because we saw a special on Amazon, we had to have it right now. 8 days buyer's remorse is much harder to handle than 4. It's much harder to handle than 2 or 1. Anything you can hustle in that process to make it shorter and get to the point where you're delivering real value faster makes a difference. Makes a difference. Okay, magic key 3, first month of relationship. It's the hugely risky time. That's the time when clients are going to leave or get nervous and potentially drive you crazy. Especially if they're a new advertiser. New advertisers get really nervous really quickly because for the first time potentially ever, they're seeing their credit card get dinged by Google or Facebook and you, and money leaving their bank account. And that's money they probably haven't turned into cash coming back into their business just yet. That makes them nervous. They may have had to tell business partners or wives or family members how awesome this thing's going to be. And it might not be delivering yet in the first few weeks. That's their nervous time. That's their difficult time. That's why the first month is so important. That at every step of that, it comes down to nothing more than really good quality communication. You've already in onboarding set out a plan. If you haven't got a plan, jump off this webinar afterwards, write down how you want to handle the first month of any client campaign. When the calls are going to take place, how frequently, how long, what you're going to cover on them, get it scheduled out and make it standard process for every client you onboard thereafter that you have a process for how that first 30 days is going to go. Make sure you know. Even plan surprises in there if you can. Organize, systemize, nice surprises because you want to make sure it's clear. And at every step of that process, confirm what's happened. For example, a campaign's gone live or reporting's been set up or whatever it is. Give them a reason to celebrate tiny little wins. Hey, great news, your ad campaign's got its first impressions today. It's not important, but it's a tiny win you can report to the client. Yeah, you've got first clicks to your campaign, first phone calls come into your campaign, the first whatever. Doesn't matter what it is, give them a reason to feel and see progress and outcome and value. Keep reminding them of those things. It's really, really important that you do that because it says a lot of things. It says, 1, you care because you've taken the time. 2, it says you're on top of things, you're paying attention, you know what's going on, they can trust you. 3, it says you know what you're doing because the things you said you were going to deliver, you're delivering and you're telling them. They're tiny little things, but that one text message or phone call communicates so much value and builds positive trust that it changes the game completely. And you can turn a nervous client into a very comfortable client very quickly if you just follow the basic rules. And don't let it slip. Make it the process that happens to every client every time. We've all had them. We've had a client who you'll put a campaign live at 10 o'clock and you go, hey, just great news, it's 10 o'clock, campaign's been turned on. And then 2 hours later you get the email, it's been live 2 hours, not had a phone call yet, what's wrong? Is it broken? Is it working? if you've handled them right by selecting the right client and setting the right expectations and communicating the right process, that phone call will never happen. You won't get that phone call because they'll know that it probably wasn't going to generate in the first call, the first 2 hours. What they might do is email you and go, you're not going to believe this. You said it wouldn't happen, but my phone's just ring with a campaign lead. It's only been going 2 hours. You change the conversation completely because you've managed the expectation, you've set the process. Hope that makes sense. Everybody got that first month and why it matters? People say, yeah. John says, yeah. Darian says, yeah. Cool. Magic key 4, adversity. Roger says, yo. Roger always says, yo. I like Roger. Adversity is the thing that scares people the most. And yet it can be your biggest opportunity if you use it right. Nobody likes it when things don't go to plan. And sometimes things don't go to plan. You know, I'll give you an example we see sometimes. Let's imagine a client is in a legal niche. In the legal market, clicks can be really expensive in Google ads. As a result, Google are particularly aggressive about throttling the spend of new accounts in their early days of running. So consequently, your client sees little result potentially for 2 to 3 to 4 weeks because their account's been throttled. Because Google doesn't want to take a risk on your ad versus ads that are proven to attract clicks already. So it sees a lot less traffic. Think about that from the client's perspective. Holy crap, I've been running a month, not a lot's happening, they haven't spent all my budget, these guys are idiots. Nah, if you've planned that up front, you won't have that conversation, but that's exactly the kind of thing we can turn into an opportunity. And if you take notice of adversity, don't shy away from it, don't hide from it, but actually get ahead of it and get proactive, you can turn adversity to your advantage. And here's how. Have a plan. Show that you're in control. Show that it might not have gone to plan, but you've got a plan, you care, and you know what you're doing. Look for the changes that can make the difference and solve the problem. And often, these look like solutions to their immediate problem, but they're also sales opportunities for you if you use them right. So if something isn't, let's say an offer isn't converting well is it a bad offer? Maybe there's a piece of work you could do that may be chargeable. Go around, do a peer review of their competitors, mystery shop their competitors, see what their experience is. Charge them a fee for that, make your client a better client with a better offer, more likely to make them money. If their website isn't converting and they haven't used a landing page, sell them a landing page because landing pages make a huge difference. It's an opportunity, but it's the right thing for them. If they're not transitioning their leads into sales and appointments properly because the 18-year-old kid on the front desk doesn't know how to answer a phone like a normal human being, sell them some sales training, sell them some coaching. And all of these things you can do. You might not have them in your business, but just because you don't do that, you may be able to make a referral. And imagine the client that goes, look, we were hoping you convert more than 1 in 5 of these leads into sales, but you're only converting 1 in 10 right now. This might be something you need some help with. I don't want to see your ad campaign fail because it's going to be great for the long term. Let's get some help in for you and get this sorted out. You're showing you care, you're showing interest, you're showing you recognize the problem, and you've got their best interests at heart. There's no reason not to do that. If you don't, they'll cancel the campaign anyway because they can't sell anything. So make sure that you're ahead of that and you embrace these adversity issues as opportunities. Couple of caveats with it though. Don't ever undermine what you've already sold. If you've sold them a campaign without a landing page, for example, and they needed a landing page, you should probably have sold it with the landing page in the first place if that was going to make their campaign better. Or at least pointed it out to them, given them the opportunity to take the landing page, pointed out up front that, you know what, if the conversion rate isn't right on this, we are going to come back, we are going to tell you to do this. We appreciate you don't want to commit to it up front, but this could be a difference that we'll need to talk about in the future. So don't undermine what they've already said yes to, because then you just reinforce buyer's remorse. You make them feel worse about a decision. So don't undermine the promise that you made in the sales process. Don't go back on that. Make sure everything you recommend really is in their interests. You don't just want to offer a downsell or a cross-sell to try and salvage something for yourself. Make sure it's right for them and make sure it's appropriate for the context. If you've bought a 2K package, it's probably not the time to sell a 100K one. And give them a clear reason why and expected outcome. It's just good practice to be that advisor. And finally, because I'm conscious I've talked longer than I should have, magic key 5, turn your clients into advocates. Advocates usually happen around the 100-day mark. This is why it gets so important. When you've got that person to 100 days, you've got their trust, you've got the relationship. You must be delivering results by now. They must be getting involved in it. And at that point, if you've done it right, clients become advocates for you, which is the best free, unpaid sales force you'll get. David said earlier, most of his clients are coming through referrals and they're already pre-sold. It's really easy to get them started. Referrals are great, but don't just wait and hope they happen. Make advocates. Turn your clients consciously into an advocate for you. Great things you can do, and there's lots of stuff you can do. Feature them in a case study where they star. Hey, here's how great Joe's opticians are doing because they use this campaign. It's done A, B, and C for them, and their patients are loving it. Their clients are getting great outcomes, and they're serving their community. Make them the star. Make them want to tell all their friends about how great things are going, where you get to play the supporting actor role. That's where you want to be. You want to be the guy up for the supporting actor award, not the star of the show. Give them some unexpected gifts. If they've hit their 50th lead or their 100th sale or 20th phone call, or it just happens to be a Wednesday, send them something nice. Do unexpected things for free. Just little things. There's always little things we can do in our businesses that just add value to our clients. Give them offers, referral offers that they can share with friends. One of my people I work a lot with, and I've been a paid coaching client of his for 12 months now, 18 months actually. He will often invite me to events, either to speak or to do something there. And those guys will inevitably, in the room, will be people who are not yet his clients. Guess what? They come and sit with us over lunch and go, so what's it like working with him? Is he good? Yeah, he's fantastic. That's why I'm paying him. I've been paying him for 2 years now. It's great. It does A, B, and C. How easy do you think it is for those guys to become customers in the future? Most of them will sign up same day because they've sat with a bunch of people who've told them how great the guy is. It's really simple. If you can create environments where happy customers can refer, they will, because they want to do that. And don't just think about the advocate as being referring somebody else and it being about the value of the referral. An advocate actually is more invested in your business because they're telling people about it. They will stay for longer. They will be better clients because they're invested in the outcome. They've said how much they love working with you. Thanks for the comment, Fran. Really appreciate it. It's been a long time, Fran. I haven't spoken for ages. Hope you're well. So in conclusion, 100 days really, really matters. And it all starts with picking the right clients, having an awesome sales process, the onboarding theatrical experience that you create, and then what happens next once you've got them. I said you could use these keys to 3x your business. It's not really 3x. I may have taken artistic license in the title. It's way more than that if you actually use it right. 2 things I would recommend anybody who's got anything valuable out of this. Read. A book called Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman. If you haven't seen that book, it's a great book. It's a really simple read. That's a great structured framework for the first 100 days experience with a client. It was really interesting. We came up with 100 being our magic number in our business, and about a month later saw this book and it was exactly the same thing. So it's not just us. It's not just us saying that. Joey's book's great. Extreme Ownership. Anybody read it? Either of these books, by the way? If you have, let me know in the chat. Extreme Ownership is a book by 2 ex-Navy SEALs. and how they run, effectively how they ran their SEAL operations by taking ownership of everything in their world. Whether you or I would think they could directly control it or not, they took ownership of it, and largely because their lives and other people's lives depended on it. I'll be honest, it's very, very military orientated. It's very much, glorifying that kind of thing. It's fine. It is what it is. So you'll hear lots of military stories in amongst the business lessons, but they're great. And the guys who if you get the audio book, which I did, the narrators who are the authors are great. They're talking really well. So I recommend both of those. Reminder of the promotion. If you haven't had a look at it already, go and don't forget. You've got, I think, 2 weeks left to get some clients in and get the benefit of that promo. We close it end of September. And if you want to 3x your business, then 3x your retention. Really, really simple. Guys, thank you so much. We're a little over time. I'll stick around for a few minutes for Q&As if you have any questions. Chris, I'm going to come to you first because you've been asking questions in both the Q&A and the chat. So Chris's question, if you want any more, fire them in. I'll try and answer them. Do you see hospitals, clinics searching for equipment or devices online for companies to sell that? Great question. I don't know his honest answer, Chris. I haven't looked personally. But I will take that Q&A away after this call, Chris, and find out who's got what and see. I'll have one of my colleagues get back to you. I've got some research on that. So give me till Monday. We'll have the answer for that one. Chris? And thanks. I've got some really, really nice feedback coming into the chat box from this thing. So great seminar. Got a lot out of this. Thank you. Incredible training. Couldn't have come at a better time. David says, I'm following our great leaders and don't read books. Following our great leaders lead. Oh, yeah. I'm with David's comment now. I'll move on from that. I hadn't spotted the sarcasm in your comment, David, until I read it a second time. Seems people have read Extreme Ownership and good feedback on it from other people as well. So Dean asked me, can I remind everybody about the 450 promo? It's really simple, Dean. If you have a new Google Ads client, and by new, it means a new Google Ads account, not just a new client to you, so new advertisers, then if you onboard them with our onboarding form and that promo code, the free 450, in the first month of that client relationship, we'll give you $150 of free ad spend or local equivalent. In month 2, we'll discount our management fee by $150 or local equivalent. And in month 3, we'll do the same. So the client gets a win and you get 2 wins. And you can either use that to discount to your client to offer additional services or just go out for a nice meal with the family. Up to you entirely. Nathan says, to tie expensive markets like wealth management make good niches? Yes, they can make very good niches, Nathan. It can be really, really cool. Think about ROI. Roofing, for example, as an expensive niche, although it be, it's not a financial one. Roofing is great because a roof's $25,000 or thereabouts. You can afford to buy a lot of PPC. Roger says, great presentation. David says, your goal for getting more clients is the one-to-many strategy using webinars, which is a great strategy and something our business. Yeah, so David's got a fair comment about our strategy about webinars. Our webinars, we try and do educational things. We very rarely pitch anything. We very rarely sell anything. It's kind of, I've often said, you don't go into being a white label service provider if you want to do lots of sales, because our business tends to come to us. We would much prefer to educate people, to advise, to provide value and demonstrate some knowledge and some skills. And some of that comes back to us as business. And we're quite comfortable with that. Have we done adverts for a CPAP machine? I have absolutely no idea, John, if I'm perfectly honest. I will, again, as I said with Chris, I will find out. And Chris says, any chance we might extend the promo or offer it again? We might, Chris. It's a test. This is very much a test offer for us. We've never done an offer like this before. What we do always is we will debrief afterwards. I'll be transparent about this. our goal for this promo, we set some funds aside, and we could have just given a free month or given a free something or other, and we didn't. We wanted to make it a 3-month activity, which probably means it's less attractive actually in many ways, because most salespeople want instant gratification, and a 3-month reward is less instantly gratifying than a bunch of stuff up front. So we deliberately didn't do that because we wanted to incentivize and encourage good behavior. And good behavior is working with, engaging with your clients, and everything we've just talked about. So by structuring the offer the way we did, it's given us a reason to talk about things like this, which are so important. I love talking about this kind of thing because it's what makes the difference. It's what weaker agencies don't do very well, but the best agencies excel at. They create great experience. One of our fastest growing partners, all they do is they look after their customers really well, and they're committed to supporting them, and they've built out a process to do it. Their customers love them to bits, and they grow quickly and successfully. And it's really simple. Google have got data on retention, and Google's own stats are very, very clear. Those partners who are best at selling well and retaining well will beat those who just can acquire every time. Kevin says, do we have any sort of guideline pricing for our services? Kevin, if you haven't done already, go to our website. There's a partner form there. If you fill that out, you'll get it all sent to you, Kevin. If you don't do that, if you jump on our live chat, one of the guys there will be able to send you the pricing through. I don't obviously have it to hand easily on this. Michael says, nice to be on a webinar and seeing it all the way through. Doesn't happen often. Well, hopefully we've done something reasonably helpful in that case, Michael. We've not had you nod off or be bored to tears during the process. Okay. Any last questions before we jump out of here? Chris says, in the story I mentioned earlier about the guy, I assume the one about the guy who had 100, won 130 and lost 150 clients, why it happened. It happened because they were too aggressive at selling. They were really, really good at selling, and they got obsessed with how good they were at selling. When you're really good at something, you want to do more of it, and they did. They sold like crazy. They didn't have the scale of operations in their back end to deal with the volume. So things slowed down. Customers got frustrated. They also found that as they built out more customer campaigns, they were experiencing new things for the first time, unexpected things that were causing problems, things they hadn't foreseen, and was having problems as a result. They didn't properly qualify their clients. They accepted anybody as a client, and that was what happened as a result of it. They realized very quickly that as their clients closed customers over the phone, their clients couldn't do it. And if the client couldn't close over the phone, they couldn't make a sale, they couldn't keep it. And that's what happened. So they now sell less, they qualify better, and they make sure that the people that they sell to can actually close on the phone, and they train them, if not, how to do it. So they're very more selective. It's really, if I can ever get him to be brave enough to write it up, it was a great story in there. It is the kind of guy who's bold enough to do exactly that. So we'll see. Yeah, Douglas says, sales is like a courtship. Onboarding in months 1 to 3 is like moving in together. And month 4 is like the marriage. Yeah, couldn't agree more with that. I've often said people think that when you've won the client that they've got the marriage. You've not. You've got your first date. Chris says, have I seen the first question? Yes, I did, Chris. I'll see that. I don't know the answer, but I'll find out for you. So I've got your questions, Chris. And what I'll do for anybody else who has got a question that I've missed, I'll hand the recording of this and the live chat over to one of my colleagues after the session. They'll go through anything I've missed out. We'll make sure we resurface and we'll get back to everybody as best we possibly can. So, guys, I hope you've got some value out of that. I hope it's been useful. I hope you're out there winning the right kind of clients. And if we can help you in that process, that's what we're here to do. So if we can help you, we'd love to. If not, I hope you've got a ton of value. Have a great rest of your day. And I will speak to you all again soon, I hope. So for now, bye for now.